This is the VOA Special English Development Report. Agricultural experts have launched a land and water management project in the Middle East. The project seeks to increase food security in dry areas. Researchers say the water availability in some of the areas has dropped well below the internationally recognized standard. Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, the West Bank, Syria, and Yemen are all taking part in the project. It is part of a larger 10-year effort called the Water and Livelihoods Initiative. The project is also expected to increase household income for farmers in the areas. The United States Agency for International Development provided $1 million for the Water and Livelihoods Initiative. Scott Christensen is an agricultural development advisor with USAID. He helped develop the project while working for the International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas. He says the countries taking part in the project were all carefully selected. He said they all share a socio-economic and cultural history. Research by the International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas and its partners has already proven to be successful. New irrigation methods are expected to double wheat production while using 1/3 of the water required for full irrigation. Experts say the new methods also increase crop production up to 5 times more than crops that depend on rainfall only. The International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas will provide technical support for the project. Officials from the International Water Management Institute and the International Food Policy Research Institute are also taking part in the effort. Each team will be joined by experts from local research institutions, universities, and government agencies. Scott Christensen said his group has good partnerships among the countries so that they can learn lessons from each other and work together effectively. He and other officials met in Amman, Jordan in February. They attended an international conference on food security and climate change in dry areas. Nearly 1/4 of the world's people live in these areas. Officials say more must be done to deal with water shortages in agriculture. If not, they say, the future of food security, economic development, and social stability in dry areas will be put at risk. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. The government in India is defending itself against charges of internet censorship. The move comes after the government last week asked companies like Facebook and Twitter to block more than 300 websites. Officials accused the websites of posting edited images and videos of earthquake victims. They said the websites falsely claimed that the images were Muslim victims caught in recent ethnic conflict in India's northeastern Assam state and Burma. A number of the images were reportedly uploaded from Pakistan. Officials said the panic that resulted caused thousands of Hindu immigrants to flee the area. They feared that Muslims would answer the false reports with attacks of their own. Lawyer Pawan Duggal says this is the first time internet and mobile phone technology have been used to create fear in a community. He says India has to make cybersecurity the top concern for the nation. Unfortunately, India does not even have a national cybersecurity policy, he says, and there is no plan should this kind of emergency happen again. Pawan Duggal also thinks India needs an army of its own cyber warriors. On Friday, India's Communication and Information Technology Minister dismissed claims that the government is trying to censor social media. But he did say misuse of social media has to be stopped. Pranesh Prakash is with the Center for Internet and Society, based in Bangalore. He says some of the web pages that have been blocked include official news websites. He says the current case appears to call for some action, but he thinks the government has gone too far. He says the effort is limiting good news reporting. Pranesh Prakash also says some of the websites were uploaded by people trying to let others know that the images were false. The government in India has called on social media companies to come up with a plan to keep offensive material off the web. Last year, it passed a law that requires companies to remove so-called objectionable content when requested to do so. A Google report says that last year, India topped the list of countries that make such requests. Supporters of online freedom have expressed concern that India may be restricting use of the web. About 100 million people in India use the internet. That is the third most in the world. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. India could pass the United States in the number of internet users in less than 2 years. A new report says India reached 112 million users in September. India is the third largest internet market after China and the United States. China reported 485 million internet users in June, and there are 245 million in the United States. The Internet and Mobile Association of India says internet growth was especially strong among people in smaller towns and cities. There was also a large increase in internet use among school-aged children and college students. This is partly because of the growing number of e-learning services and educational websites. Subho Roy is president of the Internet and Mobile Association of India. He says another big change this year is that more and more people are using the internet from home, and not just at cyber cafes or offices. People are probably buying their own broadband connections and accessing it from their own devices rather than going to common service points. This growth in internet use has also led, not surprisingly, to an increase in online businesses. Deepinder Goyal owns Zomato.com. His website provides information about restaurants and nightlife activities across India. Mr. Goyal got the idea for Zomato while working at a consulting firm 3 years ago. He and his co-workers kept restaurant menus in their office so they could order lunch from different places. We scanned these menu cards and put them online. So starting an internet venture was actually an experiment, and it worked out really well. And currently, we are getting around 2 million people just looking up menu cards on our website every month. Zomato now provides information on more than 17,000 restaurants across India. It covers areas from the Delhi National Capital Region to Mumbai, Bangalore, and Chennai. Deepinder Goyal says Zomato used to depend mostly on business people going online at work, often to order lunch. But now, with the rise in home use, weekends are also very heavy traffic for us. In a separate report, GSMA, the global trade group for the mobile industry, says Africa is the world's fastest growing mobile phone market. Africa has the second largest number of mobile phone connections after Asia. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. An eye care organization in India has been honored for its efforts to treat the poor and prevent blindness. Aravind Eye Care System received the Conrad N. Hilton Humanitarian Prize. The award was presented in Redwood City, California, during a conference of the Global Philanthropy Forum. Conrad Hilton, who made his wealth in the hotel industry, established the Humanitarian Prize in 1996. Each year, the award is given to a charitable or non-governmental organization working to end human suffering. The prize includes $1.5 million. Aravind Eye Care System was recognized for its work with millions of people in India. Retired eye surgeon Govindappa Venkataswamy established the organization in 1976. He wanted to make high-quality eye care available to all, especially India's poor. He wanted to prevent needless cases of blindness. 8 out of 10 people with vision problems live in developing countries. The World Health Organization says 85% of all vision problems could be prevented or cured. That includes 75% of all blindness. An estimated 45 million people are blind, and India is home to 10 million of them. Dr. Venkataswamy established the first Aravind Eye Hospital in Madurai, in Tamil Nadu state, with only 11 beds. Today, Aravind Eye Care System is the largest eye care provider in the world. It operates 5 hospitals and more than 30 eye care centers across India. About 70% of the patients receive free care. The money comes from the 30% of patients who can pay for their services. In 1992, Aravind established what was described as Asia's first training center for the prevention of blindness. Support from the Sight First program of Lions Club International, financed the Lions Aravind Institute of Community Ophthalmology. Also, the Aravind Medical Research Foundation investigates the causes and treatment of eye disease. Aravind Eye Care System has been recognized internationally. Its work has been used as a model for establishing similar programs around the world. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. Transcripts, MP3s, and podcasts are at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and iTunes at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. A labor group has begun investigating working conditions at the Chinese factories where many Apple products are made. Apple officials ordered the investigation after the New York Times described poor working conditions at the factories. The Foxconn Technology Group owns the manufacturing plants in Shenzhen, Chengdu, and Zhengzhou. Angela Cornell is a professor at the Cornell Law School in Ithaca, New York. She says many issues were raised last year after a number of suicides at the Foxconn factories. One issue is the number of hours that employees are required to work. Other concerns involve pay, living conditions, and even reports of violence against workers. The New York Times reported that employees sometimes worked 7 days a week. The newspaper said some stood so long that they had trouble walking. Widespread criticism of Apple followed publication of those reports. Mark Shields organized a campaign calling for better working conditions. Workers' lives are really hard and really severe, and there's terrible stories about people losing the use of their hands because of horrible repetitive motion injuries, and suicide rates that are so high that they have got to hang nets off the sides of the buildings to prevent workers from killing themselves. Professor Cornell says the conditions at the Foxconn factories had to have been really bad. Just imagine how dire the working conditions would have had to be for those workers to sacrifice their lives. Professor Cornell says even Apple's own reports noted issues at some of its factories. These included involuntary labor and underage labor. These are important issues. The involuntary laborers are indentured migrant workers, and that is a crucially important issue. I mean, that's basically slave labor. More than 200,000 people have joined Mark Shields' campaign for better working conditions. The American admits he loves his Apple products, but he says he wants them to be made without human suffering. In related developments, Foxconn said it was raising the pay of its workers in China for the third time since 2010. And Apple asked the Fair Labor Association to investigate conditions at the Foxconn factories. Apple recently joined that association. The nonprofit group was established in 1999 to investigate working conditions around the world. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Persutti. Get more news and learn English at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. A top-level domain is the part of an internet address after the dot. The most common of what are called generic top-level domains are .com, .net, and .org. There are 22 generic top-level domain names currently available. But get ready for many, many more. The international organization that controls these names will begin accepting applications for new ones in January. This will open the door to just about anything. Brad White is with ICANN, the International Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. He says, what we're talking about doing with the new generic top-level domain program is blowing the lid off that ceiling of 22. The interest is there to expand that. We no longer have to keep this to 22. It can be almost any word combination. It can be in non-Latin characters, which is extremely important if you happen to speak Russian because of the Cyrillic alphabet, or Arabic, or Chinese. ICANN officials met in October in Dakar, Senegal. Brad White says they discussed the new program for what are known as GTLDs. This marks one of the biggest changes in the Internet's domain name system, the addressing system of the Internet that has ever occurred. We want to make sure that the process of getting these GTLDs into the Internet's root is methodical, careful, and thoughtful. Anyone can apply, including businesses, governments, and individuals. The cost of a new name? $185,000. Mr. White says that's the cost that we've determined that is necessary to make sure that the applicant has the technical savvy to run an internet registry, that there is no intellectual property or trademark problems, so on and so forth. But that $185,000 is minuscule compared to the cost of actually operating an internet registry. In Dakar, ICANN passed a resolution to consider creating a support system to help rising economies with limited financial resources. For example, ICANN says Africa represented less than 12% of internet growth worldwide in the last 10 years. But Mr. White says that is slowly beginning to change. ICANN will accept applications from January 12th to April 12th. It could take up to a year for new names to become active. ICANN says it will approve no more than 1,000 new generic top-level domains each year. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. Apple's new iPhone 5 is selling well in the Gaza Strip, although people are paying high prices there. The new phone reached parts of the Gaza Strip through tunnels. They were smuggled into Gaza before the iPhone 5 went on sale in Israel. Residents of Gaza are buying the smartphones for almost double the cost in the United States. The price of the phones has been raised by middlemen who bring them from Dubai through tunnels linking Gaza with Egypt. The iPhone 5 will not be available until December from mobile operators in Israel. Israel and Egypt have put in place a partial blockade of Gaza to prevent the flow of arms and weapons. But Apple's smartphones have been available for weeks in the Gaza Strip. Reuters reports the phones were on display recently in 3 independent mobile technology stores in downtown Gaza City. Prices for the phones go from about $1,170 for the 16 gigabyte model to $1,480 for the 64 gigabyte version. Apple launched the iPhone 5 last month. In the United States, the 16 gigabyte version sells for about $650, while the 64 gigabyte version costs about $850. Apple does not have an official store in Gaza. The Islamist Hamas leadership is in conflict with Israel. An Israeli newspaper reported recently that the iPhone 5's new Apple Maps application does not list Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Israel considers Jerusalem its capital. For Palestinians living in Gaza, costs for all kinds of imports are inflated by middlemen and smugglers. Hamas adds sales tax at its end of the supply chain. But this has not stopped demand for the popular smartphones in the territory. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. If you could build a time machine, what would it look like? Maybe it should look like a telescope. American scientists are building a space telescope that they hope will look back over distance and time to show the universe close to its beginning. But this distant past will mainly be seen in infrared light, which telescopes and cameras can see, but not the human eye. The American Space Agency, NASA, is now building the largest space telescope ever. The James Webb Space Telescope is named after NASA's second director. It will have a mirror 7 times the size of the one on the Hubble Space Telescope. The mirror is 6.5 meters wide, made of lightweight beryllium and covered in gold. But it will mainly study the universe in infrared light. We usually experience infrared light as heat. But if you have ever used a TV remote control, you know there are many uses for it. The James Webb Space Telescope is a complex engineering project. It will be huge, about the size of a passenger jet, and it will have to be super cooled. Because the telescope studies infrared heat, its mirror must be kept very close to absolute zero. That is minus 273 degrees Celsius. NASA is building the Webb telescope at the Goddard Space Center outside Washington. The agency hopes to launch it in 2014. Jonathan Gardner is a project scientist for the telescope. We asked him how the device can look back in time. He says, "We can see back in time because the light takes time to get from there to here. So as we look further and further away, it takes longer and longer for the light to get from where it's emitted to here. And we can actually see backwards in time. And if you look far enough, you start to approach the event that scientists believe gave birth to everything." As Jonathan Gardner puts it, we're looking at the universe when it was much younger. And we're looking back most of the way to the Big Bang. Jonathan Gardner says any astronomer at any university in any country can write a proposal for what they want to do with the telescope. The James Webb Space Telescope should help scientists learn how the first galaxies formed and what they looked like. It may even show things scientists never predicted. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. You can watch a video about the James Webb Space Telescope and download an MP3 of the story at voaspecialenglish.com.